Welcome back to Grindelwald vs. Voldemort Part 4. Now let's switch up this background because we're going to be staring at it for a little while. There we go. Now we're going to delve deep, as in the previous video I was discussing the different types of power, clarifying that magic power, political power, and just the use of the word powers are all a little bit different in the Harry Potter universe. Magic power is power levels, the ability to cast certain spells. As I mentioned, there are spells that the characters will often say, wow, it takes a powerful wizard to cast that spell, such as Harry's Patronus, which I mentioned in the previous video. I bring this up specifically because we're going to want to define if either of the two characters, Grindelwald or Voldemort, ever cast anything that was particularly powerful, i.e. something that would require a high magical level to actually use the spell. Because of the other forms of power, like political power, it's possible to call a wizard powerful and yet them not have a high power level or ability to cast high-powered spells. And because of these distinctions, that's where one of the biggest confusions in my very first video ever came from. When I said that Voldemort was not particularly powerful, what I was saying was that there isn't a lot of evidence of him casting high-level spells, i.e. spells that require a lot of power to cast. There is, however, a lot of evidence for him having power because he was capable of creating the Horcruxes, which gave him a sort of power over death, and because he was able to raise an enormous army, the size of which we will get into later. Thanks to the distinction between magical power and political power, you can still call Voldemort powerful without him having to cast high-powered spells, which is why I made a video specifically talking about the kind of power that Voldemort has at that time. Which brings us to the bizarre catch-all term, powers. The word powers is used a little too freely throughout the books, often taking on the form of just about anything magical, causing people to miss the subtle differences. Like when it's mentioned that people joining Voldemort were looking for a portion of his power, they're talking about political power or the ability to bully others. Or when they say that a portion of power was transferred to Harry when what is really meant is knowledge, the ability to speak to snakes, and connect to Voldemort. Not power level, not an increased ability to cast spells. Then there's the use of power to define pretty much any of the different schools of magic, like legilimency, transfiguration, charms, curses, and so on. This video is probably the most important in the entire Grindelwald vs. Voldemort series, for the obvious reason that it defines that there are different types of powers the books are speaking of. An example is that I would not compare power level to political power. The ability to gather and maintain followers, though powerful, is not the same as the ability to cast a spell at a more powerful level. And the power or knowledge to remember something is not the same as the ability to gather followers.